I Know What You Did Last Summer, Us, It. Even the likes of Halloween and Elm Street movies were all about teens. So no matter the decade, without these young adults, horror movies would not be what they are. While adults are expected to deal with the bigger problems of life, young people, when facing monsters and killers, are expected to do just that. And that's why teen horror movies work better. But you know what? There are several such movies that did not receive the love and appreciation they deserved. And in this video, we're going to explore the 12 that we think are the most underrated teen horror movies from the 80s. If by the end you feel like we should have added something else to the list, feel free to let us know in the comments. And lastly, before I begin, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous videos. The Gate, 1987. 12-year-old Glenn wakes from a nightmare where his treehouse is struck by lightning and collapses. In real life, workers remove that very tree from his yard and unearth a large geode. Glenn and his metalhead friend Terry open it, only to discover some really mysterious writing. Before you know it, Glenn hurts his hand on a splinter and blood starts to flow, which becomes the first trigger in a chain of events they don't fully understand. With Glenn's parents away for the weekend, his older sister Al hosts a party. At this party, Glenn pretty much levitates, which shocks everyone. Soon, more strange things begin to happen. For instance, Glenn's wall stretches like putty. Terry mistakes an apparition of his dead mother for real, and Glenn's dog Angus dies. Terry suspects the geode wasn't just a rock, but a seal over a demonic gateway. His heavy metal records, which sound like ancient spells, also support this theory. According to the lyrics, a blood offering and a death are required to open the gate. Al's friend unknowingly tosses Angus's body into the hole, which completes the ritual. They try to reverse the damage by reading from a so-called dark book, and the hole seals, albeit temporarily. A swarm of moths shatters Glenn's window, and Agnes's corpse turns up again. As more strange occurrences happen, the group turns to the Bible for help. Terry reads from Psalms, then Genesis, and even throws the Bible into the hole, which ends in an explosion, and the threat seems over, until it isn't. This Canadian horror film, directed by Tibor Takacs, leans into childhood dread without resorting to gore or cruelty. It scares kids not because of blood, but because they tap into fears of abandonment, deception, and the walls around us not being as safe as they seem. While The Gate draws heavily from legends like Spielberg and Stephen King, maybe too heavily, it carries its own charm. It never reaches poltergeist heights, but its dreamlike chaos and strange sincerity earn it a spot in the genre's nostalgic corner. Silly at times? Yes. But if you remember being scared of your closet, it still holds up. The Slumber Party Massacre, 1982. In Venice, Los Angeles, 18-year-old Trish Devereaux hosts a slumber party while her parents are out of town. But before they left, Trish's parents asked their neighbor, Mr. Contant, to keep an eye on the place and Trish. That same morning, Russ Thorne, an escaped killer, murders a phone repair woman and steals her van. Trish invites her friends Kim, Jackie, and Diane, and extends a fellow invite to new student Valerie, who turns it down. Meanwhile, classmate Linda stays late at school and becomes one of Russ's early victims. The poor girl was drilled and left for dead. That night, the girls drink, smoke weed, and gossip while Valerie babysits her younger sister Courtney across the street. Oh, and she's also the star of the sequel. Anyway, 2 boys, Jeff and Neil, sneak over to spy on the girls changing clothes. Outside, Russ quietly kills Mr. Contant, and when Diane goes out to meet her boyfriend, she finds him beheaded in his car and ends up dead as well. Of course, that's not gonna be all. The movie goes to Crazy Town when a pizza delivery guy arrives at the door, but with his eyes drilled out. It now becomes clear that there's a killer on the loose, and panic and fear begin to blanket the survivors. While Trish speaks to Coach Jana on the phone, Jeff and Neil try to run for help, but Russ takes them out. He then breaks into the house and kills Jackie. Trish and Kim barricade themselves in a bedroom, but Russ forces his way in and murders Kim, while Trish escapes. Next, Valerie and Courtney enter the blood-soaked house, discover Kim's body, and hide. Coach Jana arrives, but only to be gutted by Russ. Valerie eventually fights back with a machete and slices off his hand before opening up his stomach. Unfortunately though, Russ comes back swinging, despite having fallen in the pool. Amy Holden Jones directed this early 80s slasher with a mix of deadpan seriousness and tongue-in-cheek timing. Though Rita Mae Brown's script began as a parody, what made it to the screen walks a straighter line. You see, there's everything in this film, from the occasional satire to near-perfect horror tropes. What separates it from other Halloween knockoffs is definitely its tone, which is blunt and quick, but weirdly enough, it's also self-aware. I wouldn't say the movie is polished or groundbreaking, but what I will say is that it's fun and never takes itself too seriously. The pace rarely lags, and the cast actually feels like real teens, not cardboard cutouts or adult actors in their 30s playing teens. In the end, the Slumber Party Massacre most definitely doesn't reinvent the genre. And you know what? It doesn't need to. It knows exactly what it is and has a bloody good time getting there. Slumber Party Massacre 2, 1987. Courtney Bates, survivor of the first film, is now a high school senior trying to move past the trauma. For her birthday weekend, she invites her crush, Matt, along with friends Amy, Sheila, and Sally to a condo getaway. Unexpectedly, Sheila and Sally's boyfriends, Jeff and TJ, crash the weekend. The mood is light, until Courtney starts seeing disturbing visions of a rockabilly maniac wielding a guitar with a power drill attached to it. The hallucinations grow worse, and she wakes up on the kitchen floor. That night, Sally vanishes, and the group searches for her, but without success. She eventually returns and says that she'd gone to the store, but something feels off about her. When Courtney and Matt are finally alone, he surprises her with a birthday cake. She likes the gesture and things get hot, but the killer arrives and kills the mood by driving the drill through Matt's chest. So yeah, they stop making out, and from there, the body count climbs. Sally dies first. Jeff, who was trying to drive everyone to safety, is also taken out. Sheila and TJ try to escape through the neighborhood, but meet the same fate. TJ is drilled, while Sheila gets cornered and slaughtered back at the condo. Courtney and Amy retreat to a nearby construction site, but Amy falls to her death. In the final stretch, Courtney grabs an oxyacetylene torch and sets the killer ablaze, apparently finishing him off. But not really. The sequel doesn't try to follow the first film's formula. It detours into the, how can I say this, surreal horror musical territory. It follows a slasher who looks like a greaser version of Elvis Presley with Freddy Krueger's or Norman Bates' flair for the theatrical. So I'm not sure if everyone would appreciate it equally. The kills are rather absurd, the visuals erratic, and the plot jumps between dream and reality without warning. But here's the thing, all of that weird energy is actually intentional and a part of the movie's strange appeal. The cast keeps it watchable, even when the story may feel slightly off. I'll be honest here when I say that Slumber Party Massacre 2 won't work for everyone, especially those expecting a traditional horror structure. But for viewers open to something offbeat, it's a fever dream worth seeing through. Night of the Demons, 1988. Teen outcast Angela Franklin and her best friend Suzanne host a Halloween party at Hull House, a long-abandoned mortuary that, let's just say, does not have a very good reputation. On the way, Stooge, Helen, and Roger pass an elderly man who curses them after Stooge moons him from the car. The man clutches apples and razor blades, which only means that he was probably out to hurt innocent kids. Although it is just an urban legend, for the purpose of a horror film, it is an omen, a serious one. Moving on, Judy Cassidy and her boyfriend Jay arrive with friends Max and Franny. Judy's ex, Sal Romero, also comes, but Sal is uninvited. Once the group gathers, Angela suggests a seance, cause you gotta have a seance in a horror movie with silly kids, right? So, Helen sees a demonic face in the mirror, screams, and the mirror shatters. That's enough to break the seal. A demon trapped in the basement crematorium escapes and possesses Suzanne. She then infects Angela through a kiss, and all hell starts to break loose. Jay reveals his real intentions to Judy, but she's not interested in what he wants. He leaves her locked in a room. Outside, Helen vanishes, and Roger panics and hides in a car. Suzanne, who is now fully possessed, lures Stooge and disappears after smashing a mirror. Angela begins dancing by the fireplace. Stooge joins, and she bites off his tongue to possess him too. From this point on, the movie goes as well as you may expect it to, but I must agree, it remains fun and watchable throughout. The film doesn't pretend to be prestige horror, and it doesn't need to. The cast might feel a bit over the top, yes, but each actor feels like they belong at this strange, utterly strange party. Linnea Quigley, as Suzanne, delivers one of her most iconic performances. Her lipstick scene alone has earned her a permanent cult status. Director Kevin Tenney wrings tension out of every hallway, with strong cinematography by David Lewis and sharp editing that keeps the pacing even. The screenplay by Joe Augustin brings enough wit to elevate the standard demonic slasher to something more. Night of the Demons delivers gore, energy, and, I am surprised to say, it has a gleeful evil. And for fans of the late 80s horror, that's more than enough. Hide and Go Shriek, 1988. A man in a suit and heavy makeup searches for a prostitute on the streets. He's wearing blush, lipstick, mascara, and a fedora, which should pretty much scream to you that this will not be your standard slasher. After several rejections, he finds someone willing, and he leads her into an alley. Of course, the reason was that he wanted to kill the poor woman with a switchblade. It's a low-energy kill, barely novel or worthy enough to be registered in your brain. But the tone is set. We then meet our core group of characters who are on that day's list. These are 8 recent high school grads who decide to celebrate by spending the night in a friend's father's furniture store. It's all sex, synth pop, and bad fashion until the lights dim so that the bodies can drop and the blood can spill. What the teens don't know is that a former convict with a snake tattoo lives in the store, and he's not the only one inside. The man from the opening scene, later revealed as Zach, has broken in too. The kills begin once the group starts playing a late-night game of hide and seek. Zach treats his murders like a craft, like an art. He stages each kill by dressing in the victim's clothes to lure the next into a trap. One poor guy gets seduced by what he thinks is his girlfriend in lingerie. The film builds toward a strange final act, with Zach now in full blue eyeshadow, leather gear, and quoting homemaker cliches while chasing the remaining teens. It's strange, over the top, and hard to look away. But what was his motive? Well, Zach was the prison lover of the ex-con working at the store. He wanted their relationship to continue on the outside, but got a no, and turned to murder like any self-respecting son of a glitch with unrequited feelings. The two eventually face off in a knife fight, and Zach appears to die until the final scene, where he kills a paramedic and drives off in an ambulance, smiling at the camera. The kills range from off-screen bloodletting to a decapitation that wouldn't look out of place in Final Destination 2. It struggles with lighting, and a few scenes might be murky, but I got to admit that they hit the grindhouse sweet spot. The acting is bad, in the best kind of way, so you get stuff like over-enunciated lines, awkward screams, and full body flailing. But what these things do is make the film so bad, it's good, and that's why Hide and Go Shriek has found its place on this list. Sweet 16, 1983. Melissa is new in town and already turning heads. She's bold, restless, and doesn't care what anyone thinks about her. She's also 15 and due to celebrate her Sweet 16. But wherever Melissa goes, teenage boys tend to turn up dead shortly after. You ask, coincidence? I say, maybe, maybe not. Set in small-town Texas, Sweet 16 opens more like a murder mystery than your average slasher movie. The local sheriff, Dan Burke, spends most of the film trying to make sense of the string of killings. His daughter, Marcy, in full good girl mode, gets involved too, either helping her father or getting in the way, depending on who you ask. Along the way, suspicion falls on Jason Longshadow, a Native American teen who gets side eyes from nearly every adult in the film. You see, even if that's not the outright focus, a tension between the town's white locals and its native population becomes the film's undercurrent. Meanwhile, the murders themselves are bloodless and largely off-screen. Most happen at night, but then again, with the film's poor lighting, it hardly matters. Half the time you're guessing whether someone got stabbed or just tripped over a picnic table. Still, the film has its charms. Hopkins mumbles his way through his sheriff's duties. Kimmel is likable, despite playing the squeaky clean foil to Melissa's wild child, and Susan Strasberg and Patrick Macney turn up as Melissa's parents to lend the film a dose of credibility it probably didn't earn. The movie opens with a gratuitous shower scene involving a character who is meant to be underage, which is hard to excuse, even for the early 80s. Melissa's sexuality is used as a red herring throughout, but it borders on uncomfortable when paired with the film's tone, which, in my humble opinion, swings between after-school special and Scooby-Doo mystery. The twist at the end ties everything back to past traumas and buried secrets, of course. And if you were looking or hoping for it, there's even a reveal at the end in the form of a pretty dramatic confession. There's a birthday party that ends about how you'd expect. It's all neatly packed into a final act that's honestly busier than the rest of the film combined. Sweet 16 isn't a classic, and it won't satisfy those after gore or high-stakes horror, but as a slow burn whodunit with slasher roots and an oddball cast, it earns a place on the worth a watch list. Intruder, 1989. At the end of a long day, the night crew at a local supermarket begins their graveyard shift. They stock their shelves and prep for an upcoming clearance sale. But it's a horror movie, and most expectedly, the night becomes a nightmare when Craig, the not-so-calm ex-boyfriend of cashier Jennifer, forces his way into the supermarket. You can tell that he does not have the best intentions. The couple pretty much argues in front of the other employees, and Linda, who is Jennifer's co-worker, quietly alerts the management. Co-owner Bill comes to the scene, but it ends in a fight with a strange ex-boyfriend. Craig runs toward the aisles and disappears, which forces the crew to search the store, but to everyone's pleasure, he is eventually found and thrown out. Everyone assumes that's the end of it. Soon after, the owners reveal that the store has been sold and the entire staff will be out of jobs. Meanwhile, Craig begins calling the store, and even though the cops stop by, they offer little to no help. Now, soon after her shift, Linda is murdered off screen, and Bill hears something at the back door, only to find Craig spying on Jennifer through the bathroom window. Bill confronts him, but ends up getting knocked unconscious. Back inside, the killer moves through the store, using whatever tools are available, ranging from cleavers and meat hooks to even a cardboard baler, to kill the night crew in pretty gory ways. Jennifer eventually notices how empty the store feels and finds severed limbs scattered around the place, bodies stuffed in coolers, and heads in freezers. Intruder earns points for its setting. Not a cabin or a dorm, but a grocery store. The fluorescent aisles and industrial backrooms give the film a unique energy. Much before Denzel Washington's Equalizer nailed supermarket kill sequences, and director Scott Spiegel found some innovative ways to play with the whole thing in Intruder. The kills are the real draw. They're inventive, messy, and fully committed to using grocery store tools as murder weapons. It's a good one, and I recommend you watch it. Society, 1989. Bill Whitney lives in Beverly Hills with his parents and sister, but something about them feels off. He tells his therapist, Dr. Cleveland, that he doesn't trust them. The feeling intensifies when his sister's ex-boyfriend, David, hands him a recorded tape. It captures what sounds like Bill's family in the middle of something that's part orgy, part ritual murder. Bill brings the tape to Cleveland, but when played back, the content mysteriously changes to a recording of a normal debutante party. When Bill tries to retrieve another copy, he finds David's van wrecked, and David supposedly dead, though the body is quickly whisked away before Bill can confirm anything. At a classmate's party, Bill gets more confirmation that something's not right. He leaves with Clarissa, a mysterious girl who knows more than she lets on. After several more dead ends, including a funeral with a suspicious corpse, a rival with a slashed throat who later turns up alive, and a failed attempt to get answers from his parents, Bill is finally drugged and taken to a hospital. When he wakes up, he finds nothing, but senses something closing in. Back home, the truth unravels fast. Bill walks in on a formal gathering where the social elite, including his family, Cleveland, and Clarissa's mother, reveal their true nature. They're not human. They're a different species altogether, and Bill, adopted into this world, doesn't belong. The guests bring out David, alive and terrified, and initiate the shunting. Bodies melt together into a single fleshy mass, distorting, fusing, and absorbing him alive. What begins as a bizarre ritual quickly turns into one of horror's most infamous sequences. They intend to do the same to Bill. The house becomes a grotesque maze, revealing even more of the family's nightmarish lifestyle. Society spends a good hour building slow-burn paranoia before veering off into full-blown biological insanity. Brian Usna, in his directorial debut, leans into class satire so aggressively it becomes literal. The rich eat the poor. That's the core of the film, delivered not through subtext, but through slime, flesh, and elastic bodies. The acting wavers. Billy Warlock gives it his all, but much of the cast feels exaggerated or flat. Still, Yuzna commits. The final act is so visually unhinged and viscerally disgusting that it earns its cult reputation. It's not clean, it's not consistent, but society sticks with you, whether you want it to or not. Just Before Dawn, 1981. Deep in the Oregon wilderness, a pair of hunters stumbles across an abandoned church. One of them, Vachel, is castrated by a grinning stranger wielding a serrated machete. The killer dons Vachel's clothes and casually walks out of the church as Ty, the surviving hunter, flees into the woods. Meanwhile, 5 young adults in an RV head toward a piece of rural property one of them has inherited. Warren, Constance, Jonathan, Megan, and Daniel ignore warnings from the forest ranger Roy McLean, who urges them to turn back. They continue anyway, but as fate would have it, they hit a deer on the road and meet Ty, who warns them of, quote unquote, demons. They shrug it off because they think he's just drunk after all. Eventually, the RV can't go further, so the group camps there. That night, they hear weird noises during their hangout by the fire, but it was just a prank that Jonathan and Warren pulled. The next day, while exploring a nearby waterfall, they come across a girl named Mary Cat Logan, but she mysteriously vanishes into the forest. Megan and Jonathan swim beneath the falls, unaware someone else has joined them in the water too. From here on, the movie picks up the pace. Jonathan crosses a rope bridge and he comes face to face with this machete-wielding killer. He's injured, then kicked to his death. Megan and Daniel stumble across the same church from earlier. Daniel, unable to see clearly without his glasses, is stabbed while mistaking the killer for his brother. Megan flees into the church, only to find another man, identical to the first, standing behind her. One twin kills her, while the other photographs it from outside. Back at camp, Warren and Constance, who were unaware of everything until this point, finds Jonathan's body drifting downriver. Warren heads off to find car keys, but comes across the body again, this time propped against a tree. Ty, meanwhile, finds Ranger Roy, and finally manages to tell him about the twins in the woods. But will the survivors live? And will Roy be able to help? Just Before Dawn belongs to the slasher boom of the early 80s, but it's slower, quieter, and more atmospheric driven than most of its peers. Director Jeff Lieberman cites Deliverance as an influence, and it shows. The film trades cheap gore for tension, built from isolation, strange silences, and slow build dread. Brad Feidel's score, years before he'd composed for The Terminator, adds much value to the film. I'd say it is offbeat, deliberate, and far more effective than it has any right to be. April Fool's Day, 1986. College friends Harvey, Nikki, Rob, Skip, Nan, Chaz, Kit, and Arch go to a secluded island mansion owned by Muffy St. John, their host for the weekend, which happens to coincide with April Fool's Day. Everything seems roses and rainbows, and the April Fool's jokes begin early. On the ferry ride over, however, that changes after Buck gets his hand seriously injured. Nevertheless, by the time they arrive at the mansion, they make peace with the accident and focus on their weekend. The pranks are showered like confetti across the house and range from broken chairs and rigged faucets to tapes of crying babies and drug-related stuff. The jokes start out harmless, but then Skip disappears, and soon after, Kit sees what looks like his corpse. It's not before long that Arch and Nan vanish as well. The group splits up to search, and Nikki ends up falling into a well, straight onto what appears to be the severed heads of Skip and Arch. They also find Nan's lifeless body floating nearby. To top it off, the surviving friends discover that the phone is dead and the boat won't return until Monday. One by one, the friends either vanish or end up seemingly dead. Kit and Rob try to piece together what's happening. They finally conclude that Muffy has a mad twin sister named Buffy, who escaped from a psychiatric institution, and worse, the Muffy hosting the party might actually be Buffy. After stumbling upon what looks like Muffy's severed head, Kit finds herself cornered by Buffy, who is now wielding a butcher knife. Kit flees, only to burst into a room where all her friends, alive and well, casually sip drinks and laugh. The entire thing has been a long, elaborate prank. Muffy explains that she wants to turn her family estate into an immersive horror resort, where guests experience fake murders for a thrill weekend. And Buck, the guy who injured his hand, well, he was actually a Hollywood effects guy who helped sell the illusion. Fred Walton directs with a sense of mischief, but the film walks a thin line between suspense and gimmick. While it builds tension early on, the rug pull finale renders much of the dread inert in retrospect. Some viewers find the twist clever, Others feel conned. It's smartly staged, but too light on actual scares. A prank movie that forgets it's still part of the horror club. The Dorm That Dripped Blood, 1982. Originally titled The Dorm That Dripped Blood, this low-budget slasher follows 5 college students who volunteer to stay behind during Christmas break and help close down a condemned dormitory. Instead of cleaning, they spend most of their time wandering around empty halls, talking awkwardly, and getting picked off one by one. Among the group is Debbie, played by a teenage Daphne Zuniga in her first film role. She tells leader Joanne she can't stay after all. Her parents are waiting outside, but the moment her dad walks in to check on her, a killer in Chuck Taylor's caves in his skull with a spiked baseball bat. A minute later, her mom gets piano wired to death in the car. Then Debbie walks into both corpses and naturally passes out. The killer runs her head over with the family Volvo and tosses all 3 bodies in the trunk. A strong start. From there, the film loses steam. Joanne, Patty, Brian, and Craig cook eggs, talk about napkins, and mumble exposition about a local weirdo named John. He skulks around campus in mismatched layers and shaggy hair, digging through dumpsters like Art Garfunkel cosplaying as Richard Simmons. Naturally, everyone assumes he's the killer. But nope. Turns out Craig's the one behind the bloodshed. He spends the finale explaining exactly how and when he faked being knocked out, why he did it, love, of course, and how every murder somehow helped his romantic chances with Joanne. Never mind the logic gaps. He didn't kill Joanne's boyfriend Tim, who conveniently left town in the first 5 minutes, but somehow thought wiping out Debbie, her parents, and 2/3 of the student help roster would make Joanne swoon. Just when things can't get more ridiculous, a local guy named Bobby Lee shows up, possibly to buy furniture. He ends up fighting Craig before the cops show up, misread the situation, and unload a full clip into Bobby. Craig wins, for now. In the final scene, Craig drags an unconscious Joanne toward the building's incinerator. We don't see what happens next, but a nearby cop comments on the stench rising from the smokestack. Someone's cooked. The film has moments. The spiked bat, the Volvo scene, the occasional decent kill, but most of it is talky, meandering, and muddled by sloppy editing. And despite the title Pranks, there are none. Not one gag, no warm water, no fake corpses, nothing. For a film with such a solid alternative title, it's a shame they went with the wrong one and delivered on the least interesting promise. Final Exam, 1981. Final Exam opens with a couple murdered in a parked car outside a nearby school. Meanwhile, at Lanier College, a fake campus shooting orchestrated by the Gamma Delta fraternity starts the exam week with a prank that would get everyone arrested that same day. As a viewer, you are made to feel confused about the very tone of the movie. You don't know if these are just light hijinks or something sinister and eerie, but the film never quite figures out where it wants to sit, and that might be a bit of a problem. As students bury themselves in final prep, a real killer prowls the campus. He stares, lurks, and slowly stalks students, but for most of the film, he doesn't do much else. The body count builds late, but the kills lack creativity and urgency. For a slasher, it's oddly hesitant about slashing. The script flirts with social commentary and quirky character beats. Radish, the wide-eyed nerd obsessed with true crime, earns points for enthusiasm, but everyone else feels forgettable. Performances are flat. Dialogue falls into monotonous, and suspense slips through the cracks. A few scenes hint at potential, especially the jarring prank sequence that momentarily injects adrenaline, but it fades fast. Director Jimmy Huston paces the film like a slow walk between dorms, eventually leading somewhere, but not fast enough to make you care. Final Exam isn't a disaster, but it fails to commit. It wants to be smarter than the average slasher, but ends up being quieter and less fun. And yet, if you are in the mood for a fun no-brainer with your friends while you drink a few chilled ones, this is your way to go. That's all in this one, guys. See you in the next video. Oh, and if you feel like there's something else that should have been in here, let us know in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks everyone.